My boyfriend Jake found our apartment through one of those for rent by owner listings. It seemed too good to be true. A two-bedroom for only $800 a month when everything else in the area started at $1,000. The landlord was an older guy named Mr. Petrovsky. He said the previous tenant had passed away suddenly, and the family just wanted to get it rented fast. Creepy? Yeah, but not totally unheard of. Petrovsky handed us the keys without even showing the place first. He just muttered, "Clean it yourself," and walked off. The locks were stiff, sticky like they hadn't been changed in years. It took me 3 tries just to get the deadbolt to turn properly. The first month, pretty normal, just the usual creaks and groans of an old building. Then came that Tuesday night. I was making spaghetti, standing in the kitchen, stirring the sauce, when I heard a metallic scrape, the sound of a key turning in our front door lock. I froze. Jake wasn't supposed to be home yet. He was working a late bartending shift. Wouldn't be back until at least 10:30. I checked the clock. 8:37 p.m. The doorknob started to turn, slowly at first, then faster. Like someone was getting frustrated it wouldn't open. The metal screeched dry and rusted, like it hadn't been oiled in decades. I crept to the kitchen window, careful not to make a sound, peeled the curtain back an inch. No cars in the lot except mine. No Jake, no one. The doorknob stopped. For 3 full minutes I didn't move. Just stood there by the fridge, frozen, listening to my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. Then came the knocking. 3 hard bangs that made the door rattle in its frame. That's when the fear hit me. Not the jump scare kind, the slow kind. The kind that starts in your gut and spreads like ice under your skin. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my phone twice just trying to dial 911. I ran to the bathroom. It was the only room with a lock. I grabbed a chef's knife on the way and slammed the door behind me, barricaded myself inside. The sink was cold against my back as I slid down and sat on the floor, clutching that knife like it could save me. Then I heard it, the pop of wood splintering. Someone was forcing the door open. I heard heavy footsteps, crossing the living room, through the kitchen, toward the bathroom. They stopped, right outside the door. I held my breath. The knife handle was slick with sweat in my hand. Bang. The first hit on the door nearly made me scream. Again and again. The door flexed inward with every hit. The hinges shrieked. Then, sirens. Loud and close. The banging stopped instantly. The footsteps ran off. Then, the front door slammed shut. The police got there about 10 minutes later. They found him crouched behind a dumpster down the block. 53 years old. Cloudy blue eyes. Crowbar in his jacket pocket. In his hand was a ring of keys. One of them fit our apartment. Turns out Mr. Petrovsky wasn't the landlord at all. He was the previous tenant's son. The real owner had died 5 years earlier. Petrovsky had been squatting in the place ever since. And the family that rented it to us? Just some guy Petrovsky paid to play landlord for the day. We moved out the next week. But even now, when I'm home alone and hear a floorboard creak, I still reach for the chef's knife, and I always check the deadbolt. I'll never forget that Wednesday afternoon in 7th grade. School let out early for teacher conferences, and I came home to an empty house like I always did on half days. Dad worked late at the auto shop. He wouldn't be home until after dark. Normally, I loved having the house to myself. I'd raid the fridge, plop on the couch, and watch whatever I wanted until he got home. That day started like any other. I made myself a huge plate of nachos, extra cheese, and settled in for a SpongeBob marathon. Sunlight poured through the blinds, filling the living room with warmth. I kicked off my shoes and thought, man, life's pretty good. Then the knocking started. Not the friendly kind, not a neighbor dropping by. These were 3 heavy, deliberate bangs on the back door. My nachos froze halfway to my mouth. We never used the back door. It opened onto a tiny yard, all overgrown bushes and a busted-up patio set. Nobody ever came to that door. The TV was too loud. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the remote and hit mute. Everything went silent. Then the doorknob rattled. Not gently, violently, like someone was trying to force it open. I slid off the couch. My bare feet stuck slightly to the hardwood as I crept to my bedroom. From my doorway, I could see straight down the hall all the way to the back door. The knob stopped moving. I held my breath. It felt like minutes passed before I backed into my room and quietly closed the door behind me. Then a crash from the kitchen. It made me jump so hard I bit my tongue. Then I heard glass breaking. Someone had just smashed our back window. I dove under my bed, scraping my elbows on the wood floor in my panic. Dust clung to my sweaty arms. I lay there trembling, staring out at the narrow strip of hallway under my door. Footsteps. At first slow, cautious, then bolder, more confident. He was inside. I heard him in the kitchen first, and cabinets slamming open, the fridge creaking, then the hallway. He entered my parents' room, drawers opening, a dull thud, something heavy dropped to the carpet. I could feel the sneeze building from the dust under the bed, but I pinched my nose shut, terrified to make a sound. It took me 3 tries to dial 911. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. When the operator picked up, I whispered, "Someone's in my house." She kept saying she couldn't hear me. I didn't dare raise my voice. She actually accused me of prank calling before finally saying she'd send a car. The intruder left before the cops arrived. It took 70 minutes for them to get there. The station was 3 blocks away. When they did show up, they found the back window shattered, muddy footprints tracked through the kitchen, and my lunch money gone from where I'd left it on the counter. The man who broke in? It was Mr. Hendricks, our next-door neighbor. The same guy who always waved at me when I got off the bus. The police found him in his garage. He had my $5 in coins and a screwdriver he'd used to pry open my dad's filing cabinet. His family moved out a week later. Nobody ever explained why he picked our house that day. Dad was furious when he found out how long the cops took. He installed a security system that weekend. And after that, he started calling me every afternoon the moment I got home. But even now, when I'm alone and the house creaks, I still hold my breath and stare at my bedroom door. And I always wonder, if I'd sneezed under that bed, what would Mr. Hendricks have done? I used to be the kind of person who could sleep through anything, but that changed one random Tuesday morning. 7 a.m. Everything exploded. I was out cold when the first loud bang echoed through the house, half asleep. I figured it was just Mr. Whiskers knocking over that huge scratching post again. That thing went down at least once a week. I barely stirred, just rolled over and tugged the blanket tighter, already falling back asleep. Then the bed shook, hard, like someone had dropped a sack of bricks right on top of it. It was Mr. Whiskers, my 17-year-old cat who hadn't been able to jump on furniture for years because of arthritis, was now scrambling to burrow under the covers. His claws dug into my legs through the blanket, his whole body trembling. That's when the adrenaline hit, like ice water dumped on my chest. The house wasn't quiet anymore. Heavy, fast footsteps pounding up the stairs. Not the usual old house creaks. These were urgent, aggressive, and then they were there. 2 figures, standing in my bedroom doorway. Time did that weird thing, slowed down and sped up all at once. I saw everything with painful clarity. The taller one wore a black hoodie, strings pulled tight around his face. The shorter one's gloved hand was already reaching for the dresser, right where I kept my wallet. I didn't think. I moved. "Get the F out of my house!" It came out like a blast. Raw, loud. It hurt my throat. I was already on my feet, bare feet on cold hardwood, moving before I realized I was even up. The shorter guy didn't hesitate. He bolted, crashing back down the stairs. The taller one, he froze, just for a second, long enough for me to see the glint of a knife tucked in his waistband. Then he lunged. We slammed into each other in the hallway. The impact shook the framed family photos on the wall. His forearm crushed into my throat. His sweat and some awful cheap cologne hit my nose like poison. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I noticed a silver sedan idling in the driveway. I tried to focus on the license plate, but the numbers kept slipping from my memory. He went for the knife, and something snapped in me. I jammed my thumb straight into his throat, hard. He gagged, stumbled. That was my opening. I slipped behind him and locked my arm around his neck. A chokehold. One I remembered from my old college roommate's MMA obsession. I squeezed and didn't stop. Not until his flailing slowed. Not until his arms stopped clawing. Not until he dropped. Dragging him down the stairs was nothing like in movies. He was dead weight. My arms burned. His boots thudded against every step. I dumped him onto the front porch right as the first police cruiser screeched up behind the getaway car. His buddy? He had already peeled out the second I showed up in the doorway. Later, the cops told me they'd been hitting houses all morning, that the knife had blood on it, from a robbery just 2 streets over. They also told me something else, that my old cat, Mr. Whiskers, probably saved my life. That part gets me, because what sticks with me aren't the headlines. It's the small, terrifying details. The way Whiskers' fur stayed puffed up for hours, the dent in the wall where we'd crashed, the kitchen knives I passed on my way to the door, and how easily I could have grabbed one. And the weirdest part? I was barefoot the whole time. They gave him 15 years. His partner was caught 3 weeks later, doing the same thing in another neighborhood. Now I sleep with a baseball bat beside the bed. And sometimes, when Mr. Whiskers jumps up too fast, I wake up swinging at shadows. I got lucky that morning. But I'll never forget how fast an ordinary Tuesday can become a fight for your life, or how fear can turn you into someone you didn't know you had in you.